My friend kept cutting off conversations whenever I walked in. Okay, let me tell you a story about a friendship that imploded, a toxic woman, and how sometimes holding someone accountable is harder, but ultimately more rewarding than just walking away. Have you ever had a friend, someone you thought was family, systematically try to erase you from your own life just because she felt threatened? Imagine being gaslit for an entire year, made to feel crazy, only for that same person to show up at your workplace, disheveled and sobbing, demanding to know why everyone had abandoned her. What would you do then? I'd been part of this core friend group since sophomore year of college. There were 6 of us, met in the dorms, stayed tight after graduation. We all got jobs in the same city, had our weekly hangouts, even planned vacations together. It was solid. Everything was great. Until Chloe started acting weird about a year ago. It started small. I'd walk into a room where she was talking to our friend Jasmine, and she'd immediately stop mid-sentence. Not pause, just completely stop and stare at me until I either left or asked what they were discussing. She'd always say, "Oh, it's nothing," or change the subject to something boring like the weather. If I sat down, she'd suddenly remember she had to leave. At first, I honestly thought I was imagining it. Then it got more obvious. We'd all be laughing at something, and the second I added to the joke, Chloe would just stop laughing. Like someone hit a switch. The others would keep going, but you could feel the energy die. She'd wait for someone else to say something before she'd engage again. If I told a story, she'd interrupt to ask someone else about something completely unrelated. I'd be mid-sentence about my promotion, and she'd turn to Jasmine and ask about her nail polish. Group texts became a nightmare. Chloe would respond to everyone except me. If I asked where we were meeting for dinner, crickets. If someone else asked the exact same question 5 minutes later, she'd respond immediately with the full address and parking instructions. When I'd show up to plans, she'd act surprised, like she forgot I was part of the group. "Oh, I thought you were busy," she'd say. Or, "Didn't you say you couldn't make it?" I never said those things. Her phone, apparently, glitched every single time. Then she started planning stuff without me. Wine nights, movie nights. She'd organize them and tell everyone, but me. When I found out from Jasmine or one of the others, Chloe would say she thought someone else invited me, or that her phone must have glitched again. You know, same old story. The absolute worst part was how she'd gaslight me about it. When I brought it up privately, she'd say I was being paranoid. "You're just stressed at work," she'd claim. She actually told our friend Becca that I was going through something and to be patient with my mood swings. Mood swings? I was being systematically excluded by someone who was supposed to be my friend. The absolute breaking point was my birthday. This was tradition. The group always did birthday dinners. Chloe volunteered to plan mine. She picked a restaurant I'm literally allergic to. When I reminded her I couldn't eat anything there, she rolled her eyes and said, "They have salads." She then moved the dinner to a night she knew I had a work event. When I asked to change it, she said everyone else already confirmed and I should just come late. So I showed up late like she suggested, and they were at a completely different restaurant. She said she texted me about the change. She didn't. They were literally finishing dessert when I arrived. That's when it hit me. I wasn't just going to take this anymore. It was time to play her game. I started with Jasmine, invited her to lunch, just the 2 of us. Casually mentioned how Chloe had been acting. Jasmine immediately opened up. Turns out, Chloe had been talking badly about everyone behind their backs. She told Jasmine that Becca's boyfriend was probably cheating because he was too good-looking for her. She told Becca that Jasmine was jealous of her promotion. She told everyone I was bitter about being single. I wasn't even single. I just didn't bring my boyfriend to group stuff because Chloe made it so uncomfortable. I had the same conversation with each friend individually. Every single one had stories about Chloe being cruel when others weren't around. She'd screenshot their texts and mock them to whoever would listen. She'd make fun of their outfits after they left. She'd criticize their life choices while pretending to be supportive to their faces. The thing was, Chloe thought she was the leader of our group. She thought everyone loved her the most, and I was the expendable one. She didn't realize she'd been mean to everyone, just in different ways. She was too focused on pushing me out to notice she was alienating everyone else, too. We all started anew. Group chat without her. We made plans without telling her. When she texted asking about weekend plans, nobody responded. When she showed up to our usual coffee shop on Saturday morning, we weren't there. We'd moved our meetup to a different place. Then she called Jasmine, crying, asking what was happening. Jasmine answered, her voice tired, like she already knew this call was coming. Chloe started talking immediately, words tumbling out between sobs about how she missed everyone and didn't understand what happened. Jasmine let her talk for maybe 30 seconds before she cut in. Her voice was calm, almost gentle, but every word landed hard. She told Chloe that everyone knew about the things she'd been saying behind their backs. She said they knew about the screenshots and the mocking and the way she'd tried to turn people against each other. Chloe's crying stopped abruptly. The line went silent. Then Chloe's voice came back, different now. Sharp, angry. She demanded to know who had been lying about her and turning everyone against her. She accused Jasmine of making things up because she was jealous. Jasmine didn't argue. She just said that Chloe had done this to herself and nobody else was responsible for the mess she'd created. Then she hung up. The call lasted less than 3 minutes. We met at Nicole's apartment that same evening. Nicole lived in this converted loft with exposed brick walls and terrible parking, but it was the biggest space we had. Everyone arrived quickly. Becca brought wine, even though nobody really wanted to drink. Jasmine walked us through the phone call, word by word. Her voice was steady, but her hands shook when she reached for her water. When she finished, a minute of silence stretched out. Nicole broke it first, saying she felt relieved that it was finally out in the open. Kyla agreed, glad they didn't have to pretend anymore. But Becca looked uncomfortable. She admitted she felt bad. Chloe's behavior had been terrible, and she agreed with everything we'd done. But hearing Chloe crying on the phone made her feel guilty about the coordinated exclusion. Something hot rose in my chest. I reminded everyone that Chloe had gaslit me for an entire year. I said she deserved to feel exactly what she'd put me through, that this was just her getting back what she'd been dishing out to all of us. My voice came out harsher than I meant it to. Even as I was talking, something felt wrong about how much I wanted Chloe to suffer. The vindictive pleasure I felt didn't sit right, but I pushed the feeling down. I focused on being angry instead. Over the next week, Chloe sent apology texts to each of us individually. Mine came on Tuesday morning. My stomach clenched before I even read the message. It said she was sorry if she'd hurt my feelings and that she didn't mean for things to get so complicated between us. The apology was so vague it could have been about anything. No acknowledgement of what she'd actually done. Just, sorry if I hurt you, like maybe she hadn't and I was just being sensitive. Nicole got a similar text. Sorry for any misunderstandings. Jasmine's mentioned that Chloe valued their friendship and hoped they could work things out. Becca said Chloe was going through a hard time and hoped Becca could be patient with her. Every single apology avoided taking real responsibility. Nicole started screenshotting them and sending them to our group chat. We picked apart each message, pointing out how Chloe managed to apologize without actually admitting to any specific action. Sorry if you felt hurt came up in 3 of the 5 texts. Kyla said it was classic manipulation, making it about our feelings instead of her actions. I agreed, but a tiny part of me wondered if we were being too harsh. Then I remembered my birthday dinner, and that feeling vanished. 2 weeks after Jasmine's phone call, I was at my desk working on a client presentation when my coworker Amanda stopped by. She looked awkward. Someone's in the lobby asking for you, she said. My stomach dropped when I saw Chloe sitting there. She looked awful. Dark circles under her eyes, hair pulled back in a messy bun that looked like it hadn't been washed in days. wearing sweatpants and an oversized hoodie. This was someone who used to spend an hour getting ready just to go to the grocery store. She saw me and jumped up immediately. Words started pouring out, rapid fire, about needing to understand what happened, why everyone had abandoned her. She said she'd tried texting and calling, but nobody would respond. Her voice got louder, and I could see people in the lobby turning to look. I kept my voice low and firm. "This isn't the time or place for this conversation," I told her. "Showing up at my workplace is crossing a boundary. You need to leave." Chloe's face crumpled. She started crying again. She had nowhere else to go, she sobbed, because nobody would talk to her or explain what she did wrong. Her voice rose higher, and I felt my face getting hot. People had stopped to watch. The receptionist was staring. I'd worked so hard to build a professional reputation, and now Chloe was making a scene. Anger flooded through me, sharp and clean. I told her again that she needed to leave. Then I turned and walked back toward my office, without waiting for her response. My hands were shaking when I sat back down at my desk. That evening, Becca called. "We need to talk about how we're handling the Chloe situation," she said. My shoulders tensed. Becca said that we'd become exactly what we hated about Chloe by excluding her and refusing to communicate. I got defensive immediately. I reminded her about all the cruel things Chloe had said about her boyfriend, about how she tried to make Becca paranoid and insecure in her relationship. Becca was quiet for a second. Then she said that what Chloe did was wrong, but that didn't make our behavior right. "We're being just as cruel as Chloe had been," she said, "just in a different way." I wanted to argue, but I couldn't find the right words. We agreed to meet for coffee the next day. Becca and I met at a neutral coffee shop. She started by acknowledging Chloe's manipulative and hurtful behavior. But then she said we owed Chloe an actual explanation if we ever wanted her to change or grow. What was the point of all this exclusion if Chloe didn't even understand what she'd done? I sat there, stirring sugar into my coffee, and realized Becca was right. We were punishing Chloe, but we hadn't actually told her specifically what she'd done or why it was hurtful. How was she supposed to learn or change if nobody would explain it? But I was scared. I told Becca that explaining things would give Chloe an opportunity to manipulate us again, or play the victim. Becca nodded. "That's a risk," she said. "But keeping her in the dark isn't actually protecting us or teaching her anything." We sat there for over an hour, working through what accountability actually looked like versus what revenge looked like. I brought Becca's concerns to the group chat that night. The response was immediate and divided. Kyla said, "Absolutely not. Chloe showed who she was. We don't owe her anything." Nicole agreed. "Explaining ourselves will just give Chloe ammunition to twist things around." I felt myself wanting to agree with them. It felt safer, easier. But Jasmine sent a longer message, saying she was conflicted. She felt good about standing up to Chloe, but recognized they were being cruel by refusing to communicate. The argument went back and forth for hours. My phone kept buzzing. Nicole said we'd already wasted enough energy. Kyla said Chloe was a grown adult who should figure it out. Becca kept pushing gently. "What's the goal here? Are we trying to protect ourselves or punish Chloe?" The group chat, which had felt so solid and unified, started to fracture. I could feel the tension building with every message. My boyfriend, Parker, came over that night and found me staring at my phone. He read through the messages. Then he put my phone down. "What do you actually want the outcome to be?" he asked. "Do you want Chloe to suffer forever, or do you want her to understand what she did and genuinely change?" I opened my mouth, but I didn't have a good response. Part of me did want Chloe to suffer. I wanted her to feel excluded and gaslit and confused. I wanted her to know what it felt like to lose friends and not understand why. Recognizing that about myself made me deeply uncomfortable. Parker didn't push. He just sat there with me. Finally, I admitted that I wanted both things. I wanted Chloe to hurt, but I also wanted her to actually understand and change. Parker asked if those two goals were compatible, or if I had to choose one. After 3 days of arguing in the group chat, we finally reached an agreement. We would have one structured meeting with Chloe, where each person would explain specific things she did that hurt them. Becca insisted we needed to be concrete, not vague. Each person would speak for themselves, not for the group. Nicole was still skeptical, but agreed to try. Kyla said she'd participate, but she wasn't making any promises about forgiveness. We spent an evening at Jasmine's apartment planning what we'd each say. We went around the circle, writing down specific examples of Chloe's hurtful behavior. Becca helped us frame things in terms of actions and impact, rather than character attacks. We set ground rules. Chloe had to agree to listen without interrupting. After everyone shared, Chloe would have a chance to respond. We'd see where things went from there. By the time we finished planning, it was almost midnight and we all felt exhausted. But also like we were finally doing something right instead of just being cruel. I pulled out my phone and opened a text to Chloe. My fingers hovered over the keyboard for a solid minute before I started typing. I told her the group was willing to meet with her to explain what happened, but only if she agreed to listen without interrupting or making excuses. I read it 3 times before hitting send. The response came back in less than 30 seconds. She said yes to anything, that she'd do whatever we wanted, that she just needed to understand. The desperation came through, even in text form. We went back and forth about timing, and Becca reserved a private room at the community center for Saturday afternoon. Neutral territory. Chloe agreed immediately to everything. Parker noticed and asked if I was okay. I told him I didn't know yet. Saturday morning arrived faster than I wanted it to. My stomach was twisted into knots because I'd spent so long being angry that I hadn't actually prepared for how hard it would be to put specific harms into words. Parker was already up when I came into the kitchen. He set a plate in front of me and sat down with his coffee. He asked if I wanted to talk through what I was going to say. I admitted I had no idea where to start. He grabbed a notebook and helped me write down my main points. The stopped conversations, the ignored texts, the birthday disaster, the gaslighting that made me question my own reality. He kept reminding me that the goal was accountability, not destruction. Even though part of me still wanted to hurt Chloe the way she hurt me, I knew he was right. I ate maybe 3 bites of breakfast before giving up. My stomach couldn't handle food right now. We all agreed to meet at the community center at 2 o'clock. I got there at 1:45 and parked where I could see the entrance. Chloe's car pulled into the lot at 1:30. She just sat there in the driver's seat for 15 minutes. I watched her through my windshield as she stared straight ahead, probably working up the courage. Her hands gripped the steering wheel, and I could see her shoulders rise and fall with deep breaths. Finally, at 1:50, she opened her car door and walked toward the building. When she came through the entrance, she looked smaller somehow, diminished in a way I'd never seen before. Her usual confidence was completely gone. She wore sweatpants and a hoodie instead of her normal, put-together outfits. Her hair was pulled back in a messy bun, no makeup. She looked like she hadn't slept in days. The others arrived within the next few minutes. We gathered in the small meeting room Becca had reserved. 6 chairs arranged in a circle. Chloe took the seat closest to the door, like she might need to run. We all settled into our spots, and the silence stretched out uncomfortably. Becca cleared her throat and started explaining the format. Each person would share specific examples of harmful behavior. Chloe needed to listen completely before responding. No interrupting. No excuses while someone was talking. Chloe nodded rapidly. "I understand," she said, her voice quiet and scratchy. Jasmine went first. She described how Chloe told her that Becca's boyfriend was probably cheating, just to plant seeds of doubt in a healthy relationship. How those comments made her anxious and suspicious, watching her boyfriend for signs of cheating that didn't exist, all because Chloe put that fear in her head. Chloe's face went pale. Her mouth opened, but Becca held up one hand to remind her of the listening rule. Becca spoke next about the screenshots, how Chloe took pictures of private texts and shared them with others to mock people. Nicole added her experience, how Chloe criticized her career choices to other people while pretending to be supportive to her face. Kyla jumped in, describing how Chloe made fun of her teaching job, calling it babysitting, suggesting she wasn't ambitious enough. Then it was my turn. I laid out the entire year-long pattern of exclusion. The conversations that stopped when I entered a room. The text she ignored. The plans made without me. The birthday dinner that turned into a complete disaster. My voice stayed steady as I explained how she made me feel crazy and paranoid, systematically pushing me out of a friend group I loved. I told her that the cruelty wasn't just the exclusion itself. It was the way she made me doubt whether it was even happening. The gaslighting that made me question my own perception of reality. She told me I was stressed, I said. She told others I was having mood swings. She made me feel like I was the problem when she was the one causing all of it. Chloe broke down completely. She started sobbing so hard she could barely breathe. Her whole body shook, and tears ran down her face in streams. This felt different from her crying to Jasmine on the phone. That had been about getting caught. This seemed genuinely about what she did. She pressed her hands to her face and tried to get words out. She admitted she felt insecure about her place in the group. She thought if she could position herself as the center, she'd be safe from being left out. She said she saw me as competition for that central position. She convinced herself I was trying to take over. So she worked to push me to the margins before I could do it to her. None of that was true, but she'd built this whole story in her head about me being a threat. Through tears, Chloe acknowledged that she said cruel things about everyone because it made her feel powerful and important when people came to her with gossip or drama. She admitted she created problems between people, so she could be the one who solved them or took sides. She said she knows these are explanations, not excuses. Understanding why she did it doesn't make any of it okay or undo the damage she caused. Her voice kept breaking. She apologized over and over, but also seemed to understand that sorry wasn't enough. Becca asked Chloe what she thought should happen next. Chloe wiped her face with her sleeve. Honestly, she didn't know if the friendships could be repaired, but she wanted to try if we were willing. She offered to start therapy to work on her insecurity and manipulation patterns. She said she'd do whatever we needed to feel safe around her again. The group started discussing boundaries. No gossip about each other. Direct communication. Regular check-ins. Everyone contributed ideas and Chloe wrote them all down. We agreed to a trial period. Chloe wouldn't be included in group activities, but could have individual conversations with anyone who was willing. I was honest. I wasn't ready for one-on-one time with her yet and might never be. And that had to be okay. Chloe nodded. She accepted that some of us might never forgive her, and she had to live with that. She thanked us for being willing to explain what happened instead of just disappearing from her life with no explanation. She said that would have been easier for us, but we gave her something harder and more valuable, the chance to actually understand and change. The meeting ended and we all went home, drained from the emotional weight. I sat on my couch with Parker that night. Part of me felt good about holding Chloe accountable instead of just cutting her off. Another part felt weird, like we'd performed some kind of intervention or trial. Parker listened and pointed out that at least now everyone knew where they stood. No more wondering or guessing. Over the next few weeks, Becca started updating us in the group chat about Chloe's therapy progress. She'd found a therapist specializing in relationship patterns and was going twice a week. Jasmine eventually met Chloe for coffee. Jasmine texted afterward, describing how different Chloe seemed. She actually listened when Jasmine talked. She asked questions about Jasmine's life without steering the conversation back to herself. She owned specific things she'd done wrong without making excuses. Jasmine said it felt like talking to a different person, someone who was genuinely trying to understand her own behavior. I read the text 3 times, feeling a mix of relief, worry, and guilt that I wasn't ready to have that same conversation yet. Nicole and Kyla met with Chloe next, reporting similar experiences. Chloe was different, more self-aware, less defensive. She apologized for real things. She talked about patterns her therapist was helping her recognize, like creating conflict or excluding people preemptively because she was scared of being excluded herself. The group chat became this weird place where we tracked Chloe's progress like a science experiment. I stayed quiet in those conversations. I was glad she was changing, but I wasn't ready to witness it myself. Meanwhile, something unexpected started happening with Parker and the group. Becca invited him to movie night. Nicole asked if he wanted brunch. Kyla included him in a group text about hiking. For the first time, my boyfriend was actually part of my friend group. Instead of the separate thing, I kept away from them because Chloe made it so uncomfortable whenever I mentioned him. Parker fit right in. He made Jasmine laugh. He and Nicole discovered they loved the same obscure podcast. He helped Kyla carry groceries. The whole dynamic felt lighter without Chloe's tension underneath everything. We'd joke around and nobody would suddenly go quiet. We'd make plans and nobody would create weird drama about who was invited. Nobody checked their phones mid-conversation to screenshot something. We could just exist together without constantly managing invisible landmines. For months after the confrontation, Becca brought up inviting Chloe to a group dinner. Just casual pizza. The group chat exploded. Nicole thought it was too soon. Kyla worried it would ruin the good dynamic we'd built. Jasmine was okay with it. I didn't know what I thought. Part of me wanted to keep things exactly as they were, safe and comfortable without Chloe. Another part knew we couldn't avoid her forever if she was genuinely changing. We went back and forth for 2 days before finally agreeing to try one dinner. The night of the dinner, I showed up early and sat in my car for 10 minutes, working up the nerve. This was the first time I'd seen Chloe since the confrontation. Parker texted, asking if I wanted him to come, but I said no. This needed to be just the original group. I walked in and saw everyone already at our usual table. Chloe sat at one end, looking smaller than I remembered, her hands folded in her lap. She looked up, gave me a small, careful smile. I nodded back and sat down at the opposite end of the table. The first 20 minutes were so awkward I wanted to leave. Every conversation felt forced. Chloe barely spoke. Then Jasmine started telling a story about something ridiculous that happened at her job, and slowly the tension eased. Chloe laughed at the right parts, but didn't try to jump in with her own story or take over. When Nicole asked her a direct question about her new apartment, Chloe answered briefly, then asked Nicole about her recent promotion instead of monopolizing the attention. She was clearly trying. She was making an effort to be different. Near the end of dinner, Chloe looked around the table and apologized again. Not the vague apology from before. This was specific. She was sorry for telling Jasmine that Becca's boyfriend might be cheating. Sorry for mocking Nicole's career choices. Sorry for making fun of Kyla's teaching job. Sorry for gaslighting me and making me doubt my own reality for a year. She said she was still working on earning back trust, and she understood if some of us never wanted to be close to her again. Her voice shook a little, but she didn't cry or make it about her feelings. She just owned what she'd done and accepted the consequences. 6 months after everything fell apart, I found myself in a completely different place. Chloe came to group things occasionally now, maybe once every few weeks, some dinners, some movie nights, but not everything. The others had rebuilt closer friendships with her at different paces. Jasmine grabbed coffee with her regularly. Becca invited her to a concert. Nicole included her in a group text about a new restaurant. Kyla was more cautious, but warming up. I kept my distance, friendly when we were in the same room, but not seeking out one-on-one time. Our friendship would never be what it was before, and I'd made peace with that. She'd broken my trust too badly for me to want that level of closeness again. But I could be in the same space as her without feeling angry or anxious. I could see her working on herself and be glad for that without needing to be part of it. The group had learned something important through all of this. Not everyone needed to be equally close to everyone else. Different people could have different relationships within the same friend group, and that was okay. Becca could rebuild trust with Chloe while I maintained distance, and neither of us was wrong. We'd also learned that holding someone accountable was different from destroying them. We could have confronted Chloe about her behavior and then disappeared forever, leaving her confused and hurt with no path forward. Instead, we'd done the harder thing. We'd explained exactly what she did wrong and given her a chance to actually change. That didn't mean we owed her forgiveness or friendship, but it meant we hadn't become cruel ourselves in response to her cruelty. I'd learned that protecting yourself from someone who hurt you didn't require hurting them back, even when they deserved it. Have you ever had to draw a line in the sand with a friend, or hold someone accountable for toxic behavior? How did you navigate it? I'd love to hear your experiences in the comments below.